Okay, so let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into foreign property ownership in Malaysia. Now, Malaysia, it often gets this reputation as being pretty accessible for foreign investors. And, well, in many ways, that's true. But for you listening in, it's really crucial to understand the very specific, non-negotiable red lines. Our mission today, to pinpoint 3 types of property foreigners absolutely can never buy. Getting this wrong, well, it can lead to severe consequences. We're talking void transactions, maybe even losing your entire investment.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here, I think, is that these aren't just random rules pulled out of thin air. They're actually deeply embedded in Malaysia's unique constitutional setup, its history, and its socioeconomic policies. They're there for specific reasons. Understanding the why behind them really helps make sense of the what, and helps you navigate the market much more effectively.
Right, it gives context. So let's get straight to those absolute prohibitions. First up, and this one seems like the most definitive, Malay Reserve Land, MRL.
Yes, MRL. That's foundational. It's strictly for Malay Muslims, and how that's defined is actually laid out in specific state enactments. Its protection stems right from Article 89 of the Federal Constitution. So any attempt by someone who isn't Malay, and that definitely includes any foreigner to buy MRL,
Right.
is just void. Void ab initio.
Void ab initio, meaning invalid right from the very start.
Exactly. Like the deal never even happened legally. And the consequence for you, the buyer, potentially complete loss of your capital, gone. And it's really important to differentiate this from Boommy Puda lots, which we'll probably touch on. They're not the same thing. For due diligence, what you're looking for is a specific endorsement on the land title, Tanah Rizab Melayu. That's the signal.
Okay, so MRL, a definite no-go zone.
Got it.
What's the second category that's strictly off limits for foreign buyers?
The second one is low and medium cost housing. These properties are specifically set aside for Malaysian citizens only. Now, this category can be a little tricky because there isn't one single nationwide definition. Each Malaysian state actually sets its own criteria, usually based on things like price ceilings and household income levels.
So it varies state by state. Like Selangor might have one rule and Johor another.
Precisely. You mentioned Selangor. They have the Rumah Selangorku scheme.
Yeah.
Johor has its Rumah Mampu Biaya scheme, different names, different price points. And what's really important for you as a foreign investor to grasp is that the idea of affordable housing has actually broadened over time. It now includes properties that, frankly, might seem more mid-range by international standards,
Yeah.
not just the absolute rock-bottom cheapest units.
That's a really key distinction. Okay, MRL, low-medium cost housing.
Right.
What's our third absolute prohibition?
The third one brings in a really significant long-term factor for you to think about. Property is designated under the Boommy Puda quota. This comes out of Malaysia's new economic policy, the NEP. It was a major government initiative back in the 70s and 80s. Under these rules, property developers have to set aside a certain percentage of units in a new development, often around 30 to 50%.
30 to 50, that's quite a chunk.
It can be, yes. And these units are typically offered with a discount, maybe 5 to 15%, specifically for Boommy Puda purchasers. Boommy Puda, it literally translates to sons of the soil. It refers mainly to indigenous Malays and certain other native groups in Malaysia.
Okay, so developers earmark these lots. But what happens if, say, a Boommy Puda lot doesn't sell and gets released onto the open market? Can a foreigner buy it then?
Well, they might be able to buy it initially if it's formally released by the state. But here's the catch, and this raises that crucial question for you. The exit risk. Even if it's sold to a non-Boommy Puda, its underlying status as a Boommy Puda lot usually persists. It doesn't just vanish.
Okay, so the label sticks.
Right. And this often means when that non-Boommy Puda owner, including a foreigner like you, wants to sell it later on to another non-Boommy Puda, they typically need fresh consent from the state authority. And getting that consent is discretionary. It's not automatic.
And land is primarily a state matter in Malaysia, right? Even with federal oversight from the EPU, the Economic Planning Unit.
Exactly. The state authority is the ultimate decision maker here. So, needing their permission again when you want to sell, that seriously impacts your liquidity. It could potentially force you into selling to a much smaller pool of buyers, maybe only Boommy Puda buyers, possibly at a lower price than you hoped.
Yeah.
It's a big factor for your exit strategy.
Okay, so those are the 3 big nevers: MRL, low-medium cost housing, and Boommy Puda quota properties, with that exit risk caveat. It's important then to distinguish these absolute bans from other restrictions, like, say, the minimum purchase price threshold for foreigners.
Yes, that's a conditional restriction, not a ban. The federal guideline, set by the EPU, is generally RM 1 million. But, and this is critical, individual states can and often do set higher minimums. You mentioned Selangor earlier. In their prime zones, it could be RM 2 million or even more.
And the rule is the stricter requirement applies.
Always. If the state says RM 2 million, then RM 2 million is the minimum fee, regardless of the RM 1 million federal guideline. The state rule takes precedence.
So with all these layers, federal, state, constitutional, policy, what does this all boil down to for you, the potential investor trying to navigate this?
It really boils down to one thing: non-negotiable legal due diligence. Before you put any money down, before anything.
You absolutely have to get independent Malaysian legal counsel involved early.
Absolutely essential. They're the ones who will conduct a proper, comprehensive land search. They'll look specifically for those Tanah Reza Malay endorsements we talked about, or any clear indication of Boommy Puda status or restrictions on the title document itself. Seeing those, that's your unequivocal signal. This property has strings attached, or it's completely off limits. Think of it as your shield against making a very costly mistake, like a void transaction.
Okay, so wrapping this up. Successful foreign investment in Malaysian property really hinges on understanding these three absolute no-goes: MRL, low-medium cost housing, Boommy Puda or quota properties, and also understanding that state rules are king, especially on minimum prices and consents.
That's right. Expert local legal advice and meticulous due diligence, they aren't just, nice to haves. They're absolutely fundamental to protect your capital.
Couldn't agree more.
And maybe just a final thought for you to chew on. While these boundaries we've discussed might seem relatively clear-cut, keep in mind that housing policies can change, they evolve, and sometimes there can be sort of latent issues or encumbrances on titles that aren't immediately obvious. So vigilance isn't just a one-off check at the beginning. It's more of an ongoing necessity when you're involved in this complex, though potentially very rewarding, market.